Hello and welcome to the IoT Uplink, where we examine all the factors driving and contributing to the complexity of the Internet of Things movement and how it's impacting the manufacturing and product development marketplaces. My name is Jeff Ranke. I'm the editorial director of Manufacturing.NET and Advantage Business Media's manufacturing group. Joining me is David Manti, our power-hitting third baseman, and as far as I know, the only man on the planet who thinks Michael Keaton was the greatest Batman ever. He's also the editor-in-chief of Product Design and Development and Electronic Component News. We've got a number of things lined up today, including a live conversation with an expert on Internet of Things security. Before we get to that, let's go over some of the facts. According to Group SJR, they're a New York City-based content firm, there's currently about 14.5 billion connected devices in the world. That's about 2 for every 1 individual on the planet. They're saying by 2020, and this number does vary depending on your source, but these folks think there's going to be as many as 50 billion connected devices by the year 2020. And of those 50 billion, they're saying about 18 billion, 36% of those, are going to fall within the machine-to-machine communications realm. David, that's a lot of data points, a lot of data floating around on these networks, whether they be cloud or otherwise. What about security?
And according to Business Insider, the #1 disadvantage IoT, threats to data. So the challenge is combining enterprise security with ease of access. According to Rockwell Automation, more than 60 billion was spent on global data security in 2011. This is projected to grow by 20% by 2020. That's growing. And just think about this. It was recently reported that 50% of utilities in the US found Stuxnet running on their networks. It just got there through infected USBs. What is that little tree thing? That is a USB. It got there by infected USBs using tech when updating firmware. So security is more than just protecting work cells or mobile device connections from each other. It's also allowing the right people access to your facility, network, and data.
To offer a little more perspective on the topics of IoT and security, it's my pleasure to welcome Alan Grau to the conversation. Alan is the president and co-founder of Icon Labs, a leading developer of security software for embedded devices. Thanks for joining us today, Alan.
Thanks, Jeff. It's great to be here.
So jumping right into it, Alan, let's start talking about, we've got all these devices talking to each other, doing work and sharing data. What do manufacturers need to be concerned with first and foremost when it comes to security? And I guess we could look at it from a couple different perspectives, looking at it from the actual equipment, the network, as well as a lot of these individual connections.
Sure. So a lot of what we're focused on is protecting the endpoints. And we really think that that's one of the areas that is been neglected from a security point of view. There are all these endpoints being used in industrial control, in manufacturing, and really throughout the IoT that are specialized devices. They're not your standard PC, so you can't run standard PC security solutions on them. And it's really critical that these devices be protected, that they have adequate security built into the device themselves. And then beyond that, that you can take these devices and integrate them with the management system for security. So really, essentially, taking the desktop security model or the enterprise security model and extending that out to the IoT devices.
Okay. Alan, how would you rate the level of security for industrial IoT in the US, and then how does that compare globally?
I would say that it's tough to compare, international to the US because it's so different, but it's certainly not where it needs to be. For a long time, companies have really not paid attention to this in the way that they should. I was actually talking to a company earlier this week who's one of the top 50 biggest companies in the world, and somebody there was a security manager saying that they've got devices, IoT type devices in manufacturing that they know are insecure, that they have plans to update but haven't had the budget to do it for the last couple of years, so they've just been sitting there being neglected. So it isn't where it needs to be.
Okay. Where does the responsibility for increased device or network security lie? Is it the user, the provider, or the equipment or the device?
Well, I really believe it needs to start with the manufacturer of the device. If the device doesn't have security built into it, there's only so much the end user can do, or the network systems integrator can do. So it starts by building appropriate protections and capabilities into the device itself. And then once you've got that, the responsibility certainly falls downstream to the systems integrator or to the end user to properly configure and use the device. And there's always a human element to security that you can't escape from.
It's amazing to me. You made a comment there about the funds not being available to secure these networks and all these data points. That's really incredible that's still out there when you look at the potential loss that these companies could realize by not securing all these data points. Alan, we understand that you're proud of a lot of stuff that Icon Labs does from a product development perspective, but looking at the total landscape, what do you see as some of the approaches or strategies that viewers of this video, those in manufacturing, can do to really improve their security, without limiting a lot of those positive elements that we look to from the Internet of Things?
We're focused on adding security to new devices as they're being built. So working with manufacturers of devices to ensure that the device has the security foundation built into it so that it can be deployed in a secure fashion. And some of the other things that are really important are training. The human element is really important. We had a large Fortune 500 manufacturer tell us that their number one security concern is the insider threat, and they believe that 70 to 80% of their security problems are human errors. Either an employee who's not well trained, or somebody who just wants to try to do a quick fix for something and is bypassing procedures, and problems of those sorts. So really it has to be an end-to-end solution, starting with training of employees and following security policies, and obviously making sure that security is built into the equipment itself.
Excellent. Great points there about how things are really shifting towards an internal concern. We're seeing that in a lot of manufacturing applications. Alan, thanks so much for joining us today. If you want to find out a little bit more about Icon Labs and their Floodgate firewall products, you can go to iconlabs.com. That's ICON labs.com. Thanks again, Alan, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, David.
According to a recent survey conducted by the software company Aptian of more than 1,000 manufacturers from across the U.S., they identified mobile devices, cybersecurity, and connected devices as the hottest trends they need to address. This seems to reinforce the fact that whereas traditional approaches to security have focused on keeping hackers and other outside sources from breaching networks, the growth in connection points makes internal measures just as important.
That's going to do it for this episode. Make sure to follow David and I on Twitter, where you can check out previews and additional information related to this program and this video series, as well as our related sites. For David Manti, I'm Jeff Ranke. This has been the IoT Uplink.